We are so excited to be here at Scripps tonight. Thank you so much to the entire team here for hosting us. Can we get a round of applause, please, for this location? So we're here tonight to talk about, clearly we're here for the sushi and the wine.
Hey.
But most of all, we're here to talk about conservation and the metaverse and why conservation is so essential in this current moment. So I'm very delighted to be here with Stuart Sandin from Scripps, Maggie Reinbold from the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance, and Johno Niles from the San Diego Natural History Museum. These are three organizations that you might think would do really different things, but they are all very united in their aim of conserving habitat and species. So I'm going to start with Stu. I'm hoping you could tell me a little bit more about your conservation work at Scripps.
You would think that we're just an educational organization or a research organization. We're both of those, but we also have this firm interest in using the data that we have. I also serve here as our director of our Center for Marine Biodiversity and Conservation, which is housed here at this building. And what this organization does is it focuses on applying the learnings that we have about the environment to address environmental challenges. We do that through the research and the education. So much like the partners here, we do the work, our core work, but we also have this very explicit foot in the conservation space. Maggie?
Yes, hi there. Good evening, everybody. My name is Maggie Reinbold. I'm the Director of Community Engagement at San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance, which I'll just say the Alliance to save time hereafter. But so the San Diego Zoo, you probably are familiar with, and maybe even the San Diego Zoo Safari Park. We see about 6 million visitors a year when we're able to share all these amazing conservation messages with all of those folks from all over the world. But you may not be as familiar with what we do on our conservation side. So some of my brilliant colleagues are here tonight. They're going to tell you how they're using conservation technology specifically and data and big data to make really good decisions about plants, animals, and ecosystems. And so what we really consensus around 3 important things. We're protecting and restoring biodiversity. We are trying to advance wildlife health and wellness, and also promoting human-wildlife coexistence. So I'm Director of Community Engagement, which means I focus entirely on humans, but my colleagues that are here tonight are also really going to be talking more about the plants, animals, and ecosystems that we all share, in fact. So thank you for being here tonight. I'm really excited to talk more to you.
Hi, it was so nice to meet so many of you today. Fantastic conversations. Thank you to the whole Firestarter team. I'm Johno Niles, the Vice President for Science and Conservation at the San Diego Natural History Museum. And we just celebrated our 150th birthday party. So, second oldest scientific institution west of the Mississippi. We've got a great staff. You'll be able to meet some of them next door with some of our crazy and weird specimens. But kind of like, I am one of the crazy and weird specimens. That's fine. I'm happy to take that. But kind of like the other 2 organizations, you would think a traditional museum is children and families coming in and getting to know something about nature and paleontology. But increasingly, we've also recognized we have some of the best taxonomists, and we have specimens, including holotypes, which are kind of the single definition specimen for a species. And we've learned that San Diego County, the most biodiverse county in the United States, also needs our help. So we've been leaning into conservation, and I think we're going to get more into that in the conversation.
But why? Why have you been leaning into conservation?
I'll hold the mic. I mean, I am the weird specimen, so I guess I will just hold the mic. We'll shout back. I mean, one of the most startling things to recognize is the pure abundance of nature that used to be here and we've lost. I mean, there were whales almost every day calving, and here in San Diego Bay, you would think about grizzly bears and massive kelp beds. We can't even imagine what we've lost. We've gone so far into, just one fact on the terrestrial side of things, we've lost 70% of all wildlife populations since 1970. So birds, mammals, amphibians, reptiles, fishes, that is the estimate of what we've lost just in our lifetime. So we don't have a chance to sit on the side anymore.
Well, and And you say that we can't imagine what we've lost, but we can. I think you went to some of the history books, you have demonstrated some of those photos, but one of the things that does exist is that there are some remnant locations on the planet that show us what the world used to look like. I remember our center here was founded by Nancy Knowlton, and her husband, Jeremy Jackson, used to describe how the Caribbean used to look. And you know how you knew when you were sailing a boat through the Caribbean if you were near to an island? You would hear on the hull of the ship. And those were the sea turtles you were bumping into that were coming up to breathe. And that's when you knew that you had to hold to until the morning. We've gone to some locations where, in the middle of the ocean, where we see that biomass, where we see the sharks, the turtles, and all that wildlife in its prodigious state. The United States protects some of these, and there are only a handful of these places left. That there's that much fish, there's that much wildlife, and what we see now is a shadow of that. Our conservation challenge is timeliness right now.
And I'm glad that you asked that also, Berit, because I do want to make the point, as the person I said, I'm constantly focused on humans, we can't just describe the loss of biodiversity and think about plants, animals, and ecosystems. We have to think about the way that that's affecting us. And so we know that we are connected to biodiversity. We are independent, or we're dependent on biodiversity for a number of different things, whether it's ecosystem services or ecosystem products. And so it really is important for us to be able to try to figure out which problems can we solve and how can we solve those. And so we're all definitely dedicated to that. Even, I guess you could say it's selfish for us as well, for people as well. Yeah.
So I want to clarify one thing. So we've talked about San Diego, and I understand that San Diego County is the most diverse ecosystem biosphere in the country. But you all are also working on conservation efforts around the world. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping you could tell me just a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, so for San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance, that's true. Again, a lot of people don't know about our global conservation efforts. We focus our efforts in 8 different kind of eco-regions around the world. 8 different hubs is what we call them. Our largest hub actually is right here in the Southwest hub because, as Johno pointed out, we have more plant and animal species that are found nowhere else on the planet in our region, our county, than anywhere else in the contiguous United States. But we also, the sad, dubious piece about that is we also have the largest number of threatened and endangered species, plants and animals. And so we do focus a lot of our work here, but we're working on places like in Cameroon, in the African forest. We're working in northern Kenya, and working in our Savannah hub. And again, each one of those has a kind of a special piece where technology has actually helped us advance our conservation management decisions and the way that we actually help manage resources alongside communities that are from those global populations.
Yeah, and so you are, like I say, here at Scripps, and speaking on behalf of our 140 faculty, we're a global organization. So when we do talk about some of these issues, whether it's the biodiversity, any of the climate-related issues, it's a global perspective. One of the biggest challenges, I would say, about having a global perspective, of trying to recognize, even to account for what the profundity of change is, let alone to start designing solutions, is finding a way to aggregate those data, is to collect enough information in a consistent way for us to be able to share what's happening across the globe, because the influences that we have, you can say act locally, think globally. We need to know globally in order to act locally. Mm-hmm. This is critically important, and we're at a period of time right now where the students coming in to UC San Diego all know that the world is in a big problem. Mm-hmm. They don't know where the solutions exist. We don't see it. We don't share that information, and that's what we have to start to change.
So part of those solutions are technical, which is why we're having this event here tonight. This is an audience of technologists. And I'm really hoping that we're going to have you talk a little bit about some of the technologies that you're already using. I know that there are also technological needs that you all have in order to be successful in building what you would want to build, which is essentially global platform of conservation data and best practices, right? And so I'm hoping that we'll come back to this in a second, but I just want to say before we get into the details that this is an audience and the people in this room are such that we have the resources to help bring this vision to life. And so I encourage you after this session to come and talk to these three incredible individuals and to help offer your whatever connections you might have to help bring these things to life. So, okay, end rant. So let's talk about the tech part.
Okay.
How are you all using technology in your conservation
You want
efforts?
to hit it?
Sure, I'll get weird and bring in our first character today. We can pass this one around. This is an extinct red-legged frog. They were extirpated from San Diego County in the early 1930s. If you read Mark Twain, you might have heard about the famous jumping frogs. Well, they're gone. And so we've actually worked across in Mexico with some of our partners to bring egg masses from healthy populations in Baja and bring them back here. I'm sure all of you know this, but the red-legged frog is California's state amphibian. You knew that, right? Everyone knew it?
No.
But it's back now, it's chirping. And one of the data challenges we have actually, Berit, is American bullfrogs who are an invasive love to eat pretty much anything, including the native red-legged frog. So we have to really kind of have active biosecurity where we reintroduce these populations. So we've set out microphones, and every time they hear a noise, they basically give us a recording that we go and collect. Over a single breeding season, that's about 1 terabyte of data. And they're all in 3-second segments. So we've had to hack into Merlin, one of the famous bird apps that are out there.
Love it. We were talking about Merlin.
Yeah, and there's an API, the bird analyzer. We've actually modified it. When I say we, I mean Maggie's husband, who works at the Natural History Museum. But we've hacked into it to be able to kind of train that model on distinguishing between a red-legged frog and some of the other noises that are out there, whether it's cars. One of the funny thing is the hooded merganser is also known as the frog duck, because it makes a sound almost exactly not like the American bullfrog, but like the red-legged frog of who it grew up with. So we've been able to reduce kind of the computational time using AI and some of these technologies by about 95%.
Awesome, and I'll just throw in a couple. I've got some brilliant colleagues here tonight that want to tell you all about how they're using technology for conservation purposes. But I want to make it a little bit personal that yesterday I celebrated my 20-year anniversary for working for the zoo. And when I started, I was in conservation genetics, and I used to work on these very small little barcodes 20 years ago. Now, as you all know in this room, we are generating entire genomes of data every single day, and we have the world's oldest and largest frozen zoo in our possession that we also share with the world all the time. So we have this like almost unlimited resource of giant
Maggie,
data.
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt. What do you do with the frozen zoo?
So that all sorts of amazing things, right? Like we can do so many amazing things with the frozen zoo. We can look back in history and see what populations were like historically. We can see how healthy populations are from a genetic perspective. We can start to do species delineation, like what is a species, what is a subspecies. We know who to breed with whom. We know where something belongs back in its native habitat. I mean, there's so much we can do with those data. Yeah, they're very frozen. It's minus 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Or no, it's under liquid nitrogen. So really, really cold. I like these questions.
How old is the oldest?
1975. So just a little older than me, but not as old necessarily as all of us. But that was the first frozen zoo ever established. And so one minor way, I'm not talking about the amazing tech that's in the hallway because I want them to be able to, these brilliant colleagues to talk about that. But the frozen zoo, it just shows you the pace of change. We have to be able to stay with that pace of change, but also the pace of biodiversity loss.
But we have a question in the back.
Okay.
I just want to make sure before you talk any more about the amazing technology, you've read Jurassic Park, right?
Absolutely.
No, what is it? Tell us more.
You don't have any dinosaurs in the frozen zoo, do you?
Well,
I think 1970 were pretty safe, but
Well, one of the things that ties the three of us together and our organizations together is that we have been thinking quite a bit about, that we share that worry about how profound the problem is. But then we also are recognizing that there's a way that we can gather a lot of information about what's going on in nature. that information sits in archives like a frozen zoo unless somebody uses it, unless it's accessible, unless it's cross talking, right? And that's everything from data storage, that's data APIs. It's finding ways that you make the user experience matter. Right now we use digital twins for factory planning, for airports, for this, for that, where we plan what something can look like using these multimodal data that are integrated and we can exchange. Right now, conservation technologies are trying to find these tools and using them after the fact. We are not being proactive in getting, we have yet to aggregate these data, think about a way that we can operationalize it, and leverage the strength of our community, the broad community, all of us, our conservation practitioners on the ground, the public, and the professionals. We don't have that capability, and that's one of the big things bringing us together here. Each of these data streams, putting them together and putting them to work.
And I would also add that this is just the beginning of the data streams, right? Like, I think the vision eventually is to be able to integrate, we've been talking about data all day. We've been talking about animal communication all day, right? So, I mean, once, but it was a very influential session. So, I mean, I think this group is very well primed to understand the power of having a global conservation metaverse ecosystem that can allow communities wherever they are to access best practices, to access data, to access kind of learning from other communities around the world, maybe similar biospheres. My question for all of you is, it's so easy to get, I think, especially with everything that's going on in the world, it's so easy to feel helpless. What is your vision for, like, what can we do if things go right? And why should we feel like this is something that is going to, like, where does this take us, basically?
I mean, I'll start by starting where I left off. I think that we succeed when we get people to be able to vision and realize their vision. Right now, we're responding and trying to react to challenges to our wildlife. There may be something going extinct, so we throw resources at it. The biggest boom to any resource management monitoring budget is a disaster. We go and we watch how bad that disaster was. You know what we don't do? We don't track the recovery from that resilience period. And then once we have any of that information, any of us that fight to have those data, we don't share them. We don't make them accessible, so they become lost. What do? We engage people in the process that we've been doing as peoples for generations. We start planning generations in advance. We start thinking about what's possible, and we try to get to that. And I think that the information barrier is a problem for us. I think that conservation technology has to be conservation aggregation and environmental sharing. We have to be thinking and seeing these places globally.
I'll respond to that as well. What will it look like when we're successful? To me, we have this innovative technology that is making all of these data that we're describing, which we haven't even touched the surface of all the data that we are constantly generating, even just across our own 3 organizations. But so innovative technology has allowed those data to be accessible to all layers of human communities, decision makers, of course, but the people that need to be using those data to make management decisions, but even everyday community members, so that they can actually be responsible consumers, responsible voters. They can act on behalf of wildlife because they know it's important. So they're moved to action because of that felt importance and appreciation for biodiversity.
Everything they said, I think maybe just to give a hard example, one of the areas where we've been really empowering a whole range of communities that have been typically left out of decision making is the INAT app, if anyone's familiar with that. Community scientists can go out and record invasive species or rare species or any species they see. And actually, if you come visit next door, we've been able to sort of source with neighborhoods, people in low income or very diverse neighborhoods or wealthy neighborhoods, and really get people actually involved, not just in the data use, but actually in data generation. And one of the things that we are constantly kind of challenging ourselves with is how we can then convert that data back so that they can become better advocates for stewardship And there is a positive note to end on, I think, for like looking towards 2050. Even while the federal government is retreating on some of these issues, we've seen California Prop 4 stand up. And this is a real $10 billion bond investment. They're looking for conservation planning. They're looking to put money into canyon groups, into alpine lakes, into every type of ecosystem to shore them up against some of the climates and just some of the biodiversity losses that we've seen. So we're actually really hopeful that getting people to be involved in science generation will actually help them be better users of that.
I just want to say, as someone who grew up surrounded by nature, nature is such a powerful. I mean, Anne, who's here, she's a physician, and she's been doing some work focused on nature. There she is in the corner. The importance of nature in human health, right? In each of our health, and how important it is for our mental health. We've talked a lot about health today. This is one of the things that I love. I've just met Maggie and Johno for the first time this week, but one of the things that I really love about every time I interact with Stu is that it's just so inspiring, right? Like, we can have these conversations where it's like, oh yeah, things are really dark, yeah, they're really bad. And then we're like, oh yeah, but what if we did this, and we could do this, and we can talk, like, we could frame things this way, and here's how we could bring all these people in, and we can mobilize all of these citizens all around the world to take responsibility for their communities and for their ecosystems. And I think that if there's one thing we take away from this conversation tonight and the power of technology to promote conservation, it is that nature is fucking awesome. And we all have a lot of personal power to do something about it, whether that is in your neighborhood or in your state or in your, when you're traveling and thinking about how you're traveling. And so I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much again to the F team. Sorry, I've had to remember a lot of acronyms and names this week. So, thank you so much to the MCTF team, especially to Allison for her help in making all of this happen. She's not on stage, but she's been hitting here behind the scenes. We have an incredible lineup of things and stations for you to interact with. There's some really cool tech out there. So give us a brief preview before we let people out.
Yeah, so we each have members of our team here that are wanting to talk about some of this technology. I think what you'll see is that we're trying to shift the script. Rather than responding and then using secondhand technology, we're trying to work with our partners to have these conservation issues be the leading edge of the technology development. I think there are commercial opportunities beyond that. Let's be clear. Let's think about that. I mean, we wouldn't have gotten Tang if we didn't have exploration, right? We all know the Tang, yeah, right? That aside, what we have next. Yeah, so there are 3 different stations over here. Johno's team from the Natural History Museum is right next door in the conference room here. Is to be sharing more about the iNaturalist program and some of the specimens and some of the discussions about the wildlife here in town. What you'll see around is the Alliance team has some of their technologies in terms of the imaging technologies and some discussion of their different sensing modalities. Mm-hmm. How can we see nature when we aren't even there? Mm-hmm. They can see polar bears by not being there, and they watch them pop out of the snow with robots that are watching them do that. It's freaking cool, and it's just so exciting. And then we've got a place to see a bunch of this stuff, a visualization lab. Nicole will be staffing that. And we can find a way to look at all these data, to interact with the data, so that we can, a prerequisite to artificial intelligence is natural intelligence. Mm-hmm. If we can't see data, if we can't interact with it, if we can't even think about what the puzzle is, we're not going to be leveraging the tools of AI the right way. So I really hope that you'll experience each of these places. And I'm going to try this joke. Is that okay? It's an evening reception.
No, please. No. You don't know Stuart.
There is some.
I do know our audience, and I think they'll be receptive no matter what comes out of his mouth.
There is some pink wine, and there's a cougar cam. So if anybody really wants to just kind of put that together, we're talking about the cougars, the cats.
Yes, mountain lions.
Yeah. The mountain lions. But if anybody wants to, there is
the
No, did that work?
Not quite. No. But there was a really valiant effort.
I tried hard.
Grab a drink and come over.
Yes, grab a drink and come over.